Friends, welcome back to the Brave New Wear Show. My name's Christian. You ever think about why I start my videos that way? Would that be something you think about? I do. And while most of my videos are basically ad hoc, the reason that I always wanted to start my videos the same way, or specifically use the word friends, is because you're my friends. Because I wanted this to feel inviting and approachable in a way that the fashion industry didn't feel like to me at the time that I started making them. But recently a viewer, DM'd me and sent me an article that they wrote on the subject, and they cited me in the article because, you know, I'm like the perfect example. But the article was titled, hold on. Your time is up, my time. Fashion and Elitism on Changing a Rigged Game. I thought this article was really interesting because it opens with a sequence basically describing enthusiasts taking a 4-hour bus trip into New York City to go to some archive pop-up thing. And when they get there, realizing that the people who are running it, the people who they would think have so much in common with so much to talk about, those people basically ignore them. They don't acknowledge them really. They continue their conversations with each other. And that person, so enthusiastic about fashion that they traveled all this way to come to New York for this special event over the weekend, leaves feeling alienated. And I thought that was really interesting because it's like, if that was a real event, I probably was there too. And I have had very similar experiences. I've gone to these events, these pop-ups, these whatevers, and sometimes I feel like I don't get it. Why are the people who run it, the people who collect these things, the people who are in love with fashion this much, why are they so uninterested in engaging with the enthusiastic customers who walk in? The reality is, it's because there is a level of elitism that's still very prevalent in luxury fashion, in high fashion at least. The fashion that is considered the most artistic, maybe the less commercial, but that's neither here nor there. I think that this is a major detriment to the community, writ large. I think that this kind of attitude will spell the death eventually of this high fashion community that we have cultivated here on YouTube, on social media. I think it will die out. And here's why. And I strongly recommend you read the article. I'll link it down below because it's pretty interesting. And I think that it hits the nail on the head with a lot of this stuff. But just try to imagine any kind of enthusiast collector. Like if you were a stamp collector and you loved stamps so much and you knew about all the cool niche stamps and you went to some event in New York City and you got there and you are among your people and all those stamp collector people were too snobby to engage with you. That would suck. It would suck, and it would feel like the community doesn't want you. The community is uninviting. The community is obsessed with gatekeeping or something like that. Maybe you would give up collecting stamps after that event. Here, let me just give you my condensed version. The elitism that's still prevalent in this community, in high fashion on the whole, is boring. I think that it's shallow-minded. I don't think that it's smart or like intellectual. I think it's actually dumb. And I think that it will be uninviting to new, fresh blood, and that will result in stagnation. But let me give you some more reasons why elitism is stupid. A lot of this is kind of like my own philosophy. So, you know, it's not objective. I just think that these things are really true. The first one is that elitism presupposes that there are inherent structures of like fashion. Like there is highbrow, lowbrow, and middlebrow. I personally don't believe in that at all. It This is like a postmodern perspective.
Now, hypothetically, it's an attitude of skepticism, irony towards rejection of grand narratives, ideologies, and universalism, criticizes objective notions of reason.
There aren't really categories of like high and low when it comes to art, fashion, design. They're all really the same. And in a lot of ways, this is the safest bet to take. It's actually safer and probably more intelligent to see art as not divided in these kind of structures, these kind of power structures that were basically invented during the Enlightenment, that were basically meant to consolidate power, that were inherently racist. The facade of smartness was just a tool by rich people to keep themselves in power. Knowledge is power, Francis Bacon said. And I think Francis Bacon was a rad dude. He was right when he hit the nail on the head. Knowledge is power, and that was exactly how people are going to start using their power. To insist that they're smarter and they know better, or if you don't know, because of course you don't have the money to know, then you're inferior. I think that you shouldn't even think of it that way. It doesn't mean that there isn't good and bad design. It doesn't mean that there isn't good and bad art. It just means that those distinctions, to think that something is elevated and inherently better and something is lower and it's like, I don't know, like trite or something like that, it's simple-minded thinking. And I mean, like, to like really bring this point home, photography and film was considered lowbrow. It wasn't considered real art. And you know, that's kind of comical now because we can think of several photographers in museums or whatever, and that feels so elevated. In the past, Shakespeare was considered lowbrow, straight up. The works of Shakespeare were lowbrow. The Globe Theater was across the street from a brothel. Shakespeare made a lot of jokes about farts and penises. It wasn't considered high art. Now we consider it the fanciest, highfalutinist literature there is. An actual smart person will know this about history, about all the different examples, and wouldn't trap themselves in that same paradigm of thinking like, this is high art, and I need to pay attention to it and think about it critically, compared to all that BS stuff. What is the disadvantage of being elite? Well, I kind of think of like Manet, the painter. He's considered by a lot of people to be the first modernist painter. You could argue that a lot of Manet's work was inspired by Goya and Velázquez. Maybe Velázquez was the first modernist painter, but Manet was smart to be inspired by him. Manet, like one of his big breakout paintings was A Luncheon on the Grass. I don't speak French, so I don't remember. And he always wanted his paintings to be presented in the French salon, because that was where the highest form of art was seen. That was where the smartest people looked at paintings. But the thing is, the salon only accepted the art that was proper, that was right, that was considered highbrow. And if you were doing something else, that's lowbrow, that's trash. Manet's Luncheon in the Park was so controversial because it clearly it made the viewer notice the facade, or like the fabrication about painting itself, about the fact that people like admire these like oriental paintings of a naked woman. A Luncheon on the Park features a naked woman and dressed men, and their likeness were recognizable by the people who would visit the salon. It was controversial because he was painting real people, and he had a woman naked in a way that made everybody think about the fact that, yeah, they all ogle and oogle over naked ladies, which is basically porn. Classic. But they had for years pretended like it was high art and it was dignified. So his painting was rejected, and the Emperor of France, Napoleon III, created the Museum of Rejects, and that's where Manet's painting ended up, and one of Whistler's paintings. Long story short, those paintings are considered masterpieces. Manet is much better known than a lot of the painters who would create the proper art that were going into the salons. He is, because he was an outsider. He was a rich guy, but he created art that was outside. He was controversial. He created lowbrow stuff. If he didn't do that, art wouldn't have continued to evolve. We wouldn't be where we are and how we think about visual things without Manet. If fashion does the same thing, if it insists that certain people are invited and new people who don't follow the rules are not invited, it will stagnate in the same way. If we love this community, if we love the idea of talking about high fashion in the way that we do, we have to invite new people in. We have to constantly be inviting friends who have different experiences, who might not know a lot about it, but anybody who's eager can participate. Because it's the new blood, it's the new perspectives and new ideas, it's the people who are doing it totally wrong, who are going to create something totally new, who are going to push the medium forward. I think one of the biggest hangups I have with Raf Simons is that he thinks that elitism or like exclusivity is inherently necessary for high fashion. I think that he has those like qualms because he doesn't like being a creative director. It's too commercial and it hurts him in some way. But I totally disagree about his solution to it. I think that there can still be art and there could still be a place where Raf Simons can basically be the artist designer that he wants to be. But making fashion less accessible, making it more exclusive, making an appreciation or discussion of these things like limited is not the answer. It will only make this subject more and more boring until it dies. The thing applies to the people who might have a pop-up or do a thing in public and not engage with the young, enthusiastic, foolish kids who would travel to come and see it. They might be idiots. They might say all the wrong things. They might not have a clue. Because at the end of the day, if you're that person and you think it's cool or better to be standoffish or haze people who are interested and might not know as much as you, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. Caveats. You know, you might look at this and say like, well, you, Christian, use the phrase high fashion all the time. Why do you do that if you believe there's no distinctions? You got me. You got me. There is a convenience to referring to things in these categories. You could define that maybe there is such a thing as high fashion in terms of it's when we're talking about fashion that is typically less commercial, that is more driven by an artistic vision of a designer or design team, that is typically more limited, more expensive, and more artisanal. But my point would be that that doesn't inherently make it better. It doesn't make it better than the clothes that maybe are designed to be more commercial, to be more approachable. Just because something is esoteric or requires a lot of knowledge to understand it doesn't make it good. And that's the point. So I'll probably still continue using the phrase high fashion to mean a certain type of fashion. The kind of fashion that we talk about on this channel. But that doesn't make it better. And the other thing is, like, this isn't scholarly work. This video probably has a bunch of holes, logic holes. It's meandering. It's not as profound as anything that you would find in a scholarly review. This is me kind of rambling about an idea I have. So I would encourage you not to conflate it with journalism or something elevated. This has always been about me talking to you guys and having fun. The reason that I talk about like books or art or any of those things is because I think it makes it more interesting to mention things that pop in my head. I don't do it to make this unapproachable or like elite or smarter. I would love you to learn something. I would love you to think about those things and maybe, I would love you to challenge me. I would love for you to make a video talking about how I got it wrong. How Manet is like this actually, or how this is like that. Just don't get on your high horse and think that you're like a Rhodes Scholar. Because I don't know. I don't think there's any good, there's not a great use for that kind of thinking. I think that it's fun to praise the creatives who inspire us, who do something bizarre and new and weird, and it's fun to use our ideas about the world and our understanding of all these different influences and sources to talk about it and make sense of it conceptually. But it's not fun to then use that knowledge as a barrier, a boundary, a exclusivo club, because I think that that's the same tools that people have been using for centuries to exclude those who they thought were inferior. And frankly, guys, if you ask me, I think I'm dumb, but I like to talk smart things. That's the long and short of it. Second thing, ending a video, I'm looking for a video editor. If you have experience with Premiere Pro and you've got a crazed, twisted vision for helping me edit my videos, I'm looking to hire somebody. So if you are interested, DM me and ideally send me a link of your work. Let's chat. Because it's hard. It's easy to record the videos. It's hard to edit them. It takes time. And I want to get more material out there. And to that extent, to the patrons who continue to support me, I don't know if I'm shooting myself in the foot, but you know that I'm really trying to continue to cut out time to make these videos because I think it feeds my soul. And I still love engaging with you guys, but it's going to be harder for me to produce content on a regular basis. If you don't want to support me unless I'm making a video each week, that's your prerogative. I guess what I'm saying is, it's harder for me right now. But if you do continue to support me, that Patreon money will probably go directly towards me hiring a video editor. But it might mean something like, what if I don't produce as many videos? Maybe it'll mean I produce a really good video. That would be great. Maybe one day I will. And until then, only bad videos.